Okay, so folks, we have one more presentation for you today, but we have another veteran giving us a great presentation about her high tunnel. The whole process. I'm so looking forward to listening to. Thank you, April, for being here. I can take the angle. Hi. All right, here we go. I'm trying to figure out if being the last one is the best. Moving closer? Closer. Yeah, okay. All right. Here we go. All right. This side is better? Okay, here we go. Today I'm going to just share a little bit about our high tunnel that we got a few years ago. And you may want to be here to find out about your own. You may just be curious about the disasters that happen, because we know in farming, nothing ever goes according to plan. And it's really expensive. All right, a little bit about me. I'm April, originally from Michigan. The Air Force took me all around the world for a lot of years and brought me back to Alaska. My husband and I decided that Alaska was the place we were going to stay, and we found our dream place, and then we started to put down roots, and then decided that our little hobby farm would be called Growing Roots Farm. Currently, I grow food, all types of vegetables and fruits and things. I raise some animals, and I sell eggs and chicks. But what you want to hear about is this. How many of you have a high tunnel or have had one in the past? Cool. So maybe like a third-ish of the hands I see raised. So you already know. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know why I wanted one. But for those that don't know, so the basics of it, right? It's a semi-permanent structure, steel frame, plastic. It is not a greenhouse. Although you can provide heat, supplemental heat if you want to do that. It typically, in my experience, it's not something where you expect it to be warm all the time. And while it could be moved, this is never going to get moved. It will die there. Never. All right, so how can you get one? Well, you can go probably on Amazon and buy a high tunnel. I don't know. That was not our route. We went through the program from NRCS and the EQIP, and we used that. We had to do a lot of things, you know, paperwork drills and things like that. We had to be established as a farm, and we got a number, and that was so cool, right? So we are farm number 511. And basically this is the contract map that we got that outlined everything about our place. Now we are off Farmers Loop, up in the hills on Cranberry Ridge. So we're right on the top there. And this is all slope for the most part. Like it's flat up here, the crest of the ridge, and then this all just goes downhill from there. Especially with the ice the other day. That is our driveway. It was a polished ski hill. And so this right here is where our high tunnel is going to go. So why get one here in the interior? I didn't know when we started this journey, like what one was and why would one person get one versus another, small, big, why? So here's the reason why you could get one, or you could decide. We try to grow things And up in the hills, even though I was told it was cooler up there in the summer, I was still determined to grow a lot of heat-loving things. And corn was one of the things that our kids wanted. And so we tried to grow corn, and we did various methods. We tilled areas, we put plastic over it, and we got these short, little crappy corn stalks that never really amounted to much. And there's other times that we did it and they look just as sad. So here's what we did. The first thing I want to point out is this date over here of April 2019. So 6 years ago, I went to the beginning farmer workshop that was held here in Fairbanks. It was a 2-day thing and Mel was there and I didn't even know who Mel was at the time. But I went to this workshop and that's where I sat next to someone from Soil and Water. I learned about the program and yet I still like really wide-eyed, I had no idea. But that started our journey towards getting this. So it was a thing just like this, except much, much smaller. Like we were all at 3 little tables. So this is vastly improved. One of the requirements for the program and getting the grant is to basically show why you need it. It's kind of like failing on, not on purpose, but you have to show a reason. And our reason, we had 3 years in a row, and it was so hard with our kids, like, oh, we're growing, we're trying, and they lived with us through, those failures. So while we continued to fail at our measly little corn, at the same time, I started the process, getting the farm number, working with USDA and the NRCS team, doing the paperwork, getting our land surveyed, doing soil testing, there's some water practices and all these different things that you have to do as part of the program, the contract. And so also, I still didn't know what I was getting into. I'm like, what do people have for a high tunnel around here? How do they grow? Where do they put it? How do they set it up? Is it steel? Is it wood? What do they do in the winter? They have to take all that plastic off? There were so many questions. So I reached out and I found several people that were happy to invite me over and let me walk around and see how they had their setup, how they grew things. Everyone has a different size, shape, construction, different end walls, different door configurations, how they water, what they grow. It's all different. Very diverse, like Fairbanks. So as I did all that, that process took a little bit, and then in February we got the big go that we got approved for the money. And so after that, it was, hey, go buy it. And so I had to figure out, okay, which type of high tunnel. And there are some recommendations through the program, but you have to buy it through a approved vendor, or not the vendor, the constructor of the high tunnel, right? So like Rhino is typically one, and there are some others. But anyway, we went through Kenai Feed, and they get, for the most part, those types of ones. And then work with Sarah there to figure out exactly what would work for us. And we ordered that, and for the program, it's a reimbursable thing, right? So we had to front the money. In our case, because I was under the beginning farmer, I was able to have at least 50% of that up front to be able to pay for the $7,000 high tunnel, the basic price, basic cost. So we ordered it, and my goodness, it showed up. We met her at Mushers Hall in, I think, Memorial Day. I don't know, it was pretty fast, just took a couple months. We got it, and then it took us until October to get it completely set up. And then we grew, and we grew great big things, corn, tomatoes, cucumbers, lots of great stuff. But now I want to talk about more of the specifics. Here are the good things that came out of it. We grew the most amazing sweet corn ever. It was the dinner to die for. I mean, it was great, and it had butter all over it. It didn't need butter, but it was sweet, and it was good, and it was what I consider the perfect ear corn. I mean, it was beautiful. And we also grew a lot of other things that loved heat. I always wanted also to grow in there tomatoes and cucumbers. And then after that, corn, tomatoes, cucumbers, everything else was gonna be a bonus. And so I figured out that my zucchini, that I was doing okay with, but man, they love the heat in the high tunnel. They did great. Pumpkins, green beans, my green beans, I could not grow them. They did not like the cool, damp area where I was growing in the hillside, even though it was south facing. But now, I mean, tons and tons of green beans. And then also my basil, it loves it in there, and huckleberries. So I've been growing some garden huckleberries in there, and they are a nice treat. I don't know, how many are familiar with garden huckleberries? Just a few? If you go in there and you try to sneak one, I dare you to come in the high tunnel and sneak one of those berries. Because it will taste like dirt. They taste awful fresh. But when you cook them, that's when the magic happens. It releases whatever the enzyme is in it, and they turn into this most amazing fruit for jam or spread or pie. Some more good things. This was the first year we grew in there, and we could watch the corn grow along with our kids. I mean, that was just in 1 month. And it ended up where it like touches the top. The next year I had to move it to the middle more because it was hitting the sides. Another good thing was when we constructed it, we were able to save the organic material that was on the top. So the place that we put the high tunnel was a field where the previous owner had a steer out there. And so we didn't know it when we first started until we started testing the soil, but there was such an amazing amount of organic matter there. And so before we constructed, we had it all scraped up and put into a pile to save for later. Soil blocking, that's already been talked about. That's a practice I've been using, and I only have like a 4 blocker from Johnny's, but it works great because I'm not producing 25,000 plants. But the thing I figured out is we can make the blocks, and up here is corn. And specifically for the corn, I just have it and I put it on a boot tray and put some water there. And I think I started, April-ish. And I leave it in the high tunnel. That's where it stays. And I cover it with plastic. And so it grows up where it's gonna grow up. So the first time I did it, I put it in the garage and under my regular grow lights and everything. But then I figured out that I can just leave it in there. And then I'm not actually moving plants to transplant either. It just knows this is its place. And as long as I cover it with plastic for those cold nights yet, it's okay. The other good thing that we finally figured out in the second year was getting Typar that we bought from Stephanie at Plant Kingdom. That Typar like changed my life. It took care of the weeds. It kept the moisture in where I needed it. And it made everything so much easier. Another good thing is that I figured out after I was only growing in here this 2 years, right? So it's all been trial and error as far as where to plant things and how to support them. So figuring out trellising, and which direction as far as north, south, east, west, which way to plant things, right, made a difference. You put the corn on the south side, the corn in the middle, and I put my zucchini on the back side, because the zucchini don't really care about they still get the light. But just going through those things and figuring it out, and here is just a tomato plant that this was nearly the perfect setup for me, because she had her place to grow, she had her irrigation, and she had, the weeds kept down from her. And it wouldn't get really tall, but some other ones I have other, ways to stake them better. And ventilation. So ventilation is huge when you, when you have a high tunnel. And so grateful that, one person that I visited, Rebecca, she told me, she's like, man, if you do it, you better get roll-up sides. And I'm like, okay, I believe you, I will do that. I don't even know what that is, but I'll get roll-up sides. And so we put that on the list. And, when I wish I had the thermometer picture, but this is a roll-up side. And you can see them here. In March, it's like without ventilation, over 100 degrees in there. Because that sun just bakes on that plastic and heats it up so much, and then your plants will suffer the consequences. But once we finally got the ventilation going, then that helped a lot. And the other one we did, it wasn't until the second year, were these shutters. And so, the shutters are actually controlled with a solar wax actuator louver thing. So when it gets hot enough, it expands. And the thing I didn't mention is that our high tunnel is completely off grid. I mean, we have power in our house, but this, when we put it on our property, there's no power. We have to be very creative with all the things we do for it. So that's how, we set it up. So it opens at, I think 85 degrees. And that opens. But we're still old school, and we send the kids out to crank that sucker up somewhere around 10 in the morning. And the other lifesaver was the drip irrigation that we finally figured out for the second year. That right there definitely paid for itself in time. And the way that the plants grew the next year after having that set up it was like night and day. It was so incredible. And uniformity from plants, because before when we hand watered, some got a little, it ran off, but the drip irrigation helped a lot. Now, the bad, hand watering plants. It didn't seem that bad when we started. And we had a garden hose that came from our rain collection tank on the outside. It would come in the door, and then we would fill up our buckets and our cans, and we would water like 144 corn plants, 40 tomatoes. And my kids then soon hated gardening. Like they didn't care about corn anymore. But it was so much work, and I was tracking the hours and how much we were watering, just because we have a 2,500 gallon tank, and I wanted to see like how fast, like how long will it last. It was not great. So if you remember, I mentioned that high tunnels are not typically heated. Well, when we have plants in the ground, and then we get those early June cool nights, and those little frosts that come in, or maybe it's just cold, or maybe it's because it's on that part of our hill. My poor huckleberry here, he suffered because it was cold. And I had some tomatoes that happened too. So I still have the problem or the challenge of watching the weather during those shoulder seasons, to figure out like, well, do I have to go in and protect them with other plastic or something? And it's still a learning game for me. This guy, he came back, he made it. So it was also kind of a good test to see like how, I guess, how resilient it was that it'd been growing in there so long already. But when you have a high tunnel, right, you're playing God in there because you are isolated from all the weather. So I forgot to mention another reason, or some of the reasons why you might want to get a high tunnel, right, are to increase the temperature, but also you can protect from the hail. You can protect from all that rain that we had last year when I watched on the garden page and everyone's like, oh my gosh, all this rain. And I'm like, well, I'm still controlling my water in there, you know? And so that part was really cool. But you're also controlling the temperature and trying to figure out as well the moisture in there. Because if it's too wet, then you're going to have things rotting. And maybe you have slugs that decide to start crawling in there. We saw our first two on the plastic last year. And they might be my mission this year to eradicate, I don't know. But it was pretty steamy in there that day. So every day is like a decision. Do I open up the sides or not? The shutters do their own thing. They just know if it's too hot to open, but we still have to do the roll up sides to make sure there's enough airflow. And when it tassels and pollination time happens, that's another thing that I've been trying to figure out. It seemed pretty good if I have the sides open most days that it will pollinate like it needs to. But I also noticed there was a period of time where I had farm sitters and I didn't tell them to do that because I didn't expect that. And there were several corn stalks that did not, they're missing a lot of kernels. The bad of delivery. Okay, so I know it's already been talked about a little bit as far as getting things shipped up here. Delivery in this instance was, it cost $800 to pay Kenai Feed to drive our pipes up here. Right, they were making a delivery, but we still had to pay, otherwise we could have went down there, but we didn't have the trailer and the equipment to do that. So resources are a huge thing. Snow management is fun. If it's just tapping the snow is really not that bad. For the most part, our high tunnel sheds itself. But when we got that big, heavy, wet snow, not so much. And then we just have like this soft cloth squeegee thing, and we just go up and we tap it. And it's actually kind of fun if you just gotta hit the right spot, and then the whole side just shuts off. And it's kind of scary because it's pretty loud. But on the topic of snow management, snow management after a storm it goes from bad to ugly. And I had a little video here, so it did not translate, but basically the snow sloughs off and piles up. And I heard not too long ago that, there's a thing about, well, you can just leave it there and it forms like this hard ice thing. And there's no way we're doing that, because if we leave all that snow there, come April, March, all that is just going to be washing through there and melting and filling it up with water. Oh, there it is. Okay, the other one is hand watering. So hand watering bad. Hand watering mature plants, really bad. Going through corn rows and corn tassel, pollen, all that stuff all over you. and itchy. It was a nightmare. Nobody wanted to do it. The other ugly was, the site prep. So because where we live is, up on the ridge in the hills and it's schist. It is silty, it is, bedrock. And we knew that there would be challenges with it, but we didn't know how hard the challenges would be. So in order to put these pipes in, these, I think there were 6 feet steel posts, and you have to put them in the ground at least 2 feet, ideally 4 feet. And there's no like, just tapping those suckers in. We had to have equipment rented, and it was extreme physical labor. You can't click on that, can you? Nope. Didn't work.
They can
Oh,
use
wow,
to
okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, well. Sometimes it works. Okay, well, anyway, what you would see there, my girl's jumping, and that would be the permafrosty that boils the water under there. So even after we got everything cleared, it was swishy, it was fun, but we were not putting up a high tunnel until that dried out. So we had delays and, yeah.
might be on the.
Oh.
I'm trying to figure out where we are.
Sorry.
I think we are. Hold on. Oh my goodness. It worked and then I immediately clicked on two posts. My apologies.
Maybe I said that. Oh, sorry.
Okay, could you try the clicker now?
I just worry that the people online would get knocked off.
Here, do you want to
No,
come check?
just keep going.
Okay.
That's fine. Sorry. All right, and then more site prep. The site prep was the hardest part. And we completely underestimated what it was gonna take for us to put it there. There's the uneven pipes there. We put them in as far as we could, and then we had to cut them all, make them all level. Had to rent a big air compressor for the hydraulic pounder, more costs. My poor husband. And then an auger to be able to put in the end walls, to put in the 4x4s, and then we would hit rock every like 30 seconds and then figure out either gotta remove it or get out the rock. And then, if you are using the contract, the grant route, right, you're in a contract. And we all know contracts, you're signing for doing certain things that you've signed up for. And at this time, we had to have that thing fully inspection ready, basically by the end of that season, which also meant putting on the plastic, even though it was October. And we weren't gonna be able to grow anything in it. So it was so frustrating to know that we still had to go through with all this. And so we had to put it on. And then once we got it on, they came inspected, then we had to make a decision, do we go take it back off? And so my husband and I, like, we, no kidding, sat there, proed and conned the whole thing, like, you know what, we're just gonna go for it and leave it. And it worked out, and it's been on ever since. But it's been a lot of work in the winter, keeping tabs on the weather and what's going on there. So the contract, there was some stressors with that. And then the other big, so if I could summarize it into the most ugly, would be the site prep that we just didn't realize the full extent because of everything we had to do and how long, but it would be all the extra costs. So in, I think it was Abby's presentation before, when you talk about numbers, the dream, all of a sudden, it's really sad. It's stressful because Roll-up sides were an extra $2,000 that I didn't realize, right? So yes, the program paid for my $7,000 high tunnel, but the roll-up sides were $2,000. The shutters were another grand. The delivery was 800. The schist thing, you know, there's nobody in town that I know of that you can call and say, hey, I want to put up a high tunnel. Can I, contract you to come do that? Like that's not a thing. And we were not comfortable with calling just any contractor that didn't know about a high tunnel to do that. And so we, basically hired Jeremiah, whoever knows Jeremiah Moon, because he was familiar with high tunnels. He had the skid steer, he had the equipment to do it. And so we paid, for his, services and equipment to do that. But then we still had, because things weren't working, we had to pay for the auger and the post pounder and the compressor that goes with that, and then all the extra equipment and tools we needed. Oh, and I didn't realize, I knew they said that end walls didn't come with it, but I didn't realize I had to decide between steel posts that cost a lot of money and 4x4s, really big ones that still cost a lot of money. And so we had to pay for all that, all the lumber along the sides to do the baseboards as well as the pony walls. And this was during the, oh my gosh, COVID, lumber costs a lot more money now. So, wait, is there more? No, that was, lumber, that was huge. And then eventually, right, soil irrigation, but to me, those things, I mean, yes, I need soil to grow in, but it was just the, get the thing constructed costs that there were a lot. And so I'll tell you, all of that, just shy of 20 grand. So should you get a high tunnel? You think? I would ask yourself if your methods are working, why or why not? The temperature, the wind, the rain, do you have the money, or can you save up for it, or just like plan for it? What size makes sense for you? That's gonna impact the cost. Do you have the resources? We did not have heavy equipment at our place. We either had to rent it, contract it out, or something. That would have been a huge savings. And then, can you maintain it in the winter? But in the end, if you ask me, was it all worth it? What I wish I'd known was the budget part and all those extra costs. I wish I would have known more people that had high tunnels that I could go around and tour and see. And I also wish I would have took better notes, because there's something that I did not do that several people, including people here in the audience, told me to do, and I didn't do it. And that was to double up my plastic where we put the wiggle wire, so I would save it. And then all the stressors and getting it done, I forgot. And so it's not terrible, but it would have probably saved us in the future. Just some last thoughts. We think food is medicine for us, and you pay for it now or you pay for it later. So we believe in eating good food. If you set your high tunnel up properly, you do, thought out things, it can run itself. My best example of that is that last summer, we were gone during peak growing season from mid-July to mid-August. We were gone 1 month. I had a farm sitter who really didn't know much about plants, and I was a little worried. But when I came back, everything in there was lush and bountiful, and all she had to do was monitor the solar water irrigation we had, and harvest and eat and just pick the stuff. And that was it. No weeding, nothing else, no fertilizing, and it did great all on its own. I love the farmer's market, and I would buy all this stuff before, but I can't afford to feed 3 teenagers, 10-year-old, 13 and 16-year-old, with $10 tomatoes. I remember buying tomatoes from Mike at Rosy Creek for like $3 a pound. So now we grow our own and we can do that. And hopefully we can continue to have enough that we can sell the extra to neighbors. And the really cool part is our kids know where the fruit comes from. They know how to grow it. Whether they want to water or not, that's a different story. But my answer is yes. It was worth it. And I would do it all over again, just with a few tweaks to make it a little bit better. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what was your final conclusion on which way to do your roads, like north, south?
Yes. So I have different things going different directions. So you come over and I'll show you how I have it laid out, because it depends on the plan.
Do you know, or have you looked into polygrams?
What is that?
Basically, it's a high tunnel, but with permanent instead of glass.
That sounds expensive.
In Scotland, they're actually doing them, and it's, on the fishing industry, they're reusing stuff from the fishing industry. Because they're high winds.
I do in the future want to put polycarbonate panels on the end walls, but that's like a future update.
No,
No?
We have poly on the ends and then the one place, the plastic stuff breaks. And, the moose, the moose stay out of everything else that they can just.
Any more questions? If there's no more questions, we'll hand it over to Mel to wrap up. Just as a casual reminder to farmers, if you do